The Florida sun was setting over the Gulf, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold as I drove home from my attorney's office. After 41 years as a federal judge, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal imaginable, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. My brother Thomas had passed away 3 months ago, leaving me his entire estate. The waterfront mansion in Naples worth $4 million. His investment portfolio, another $3 million. The rare coin collection he'd spent decades building, appraised at nearly $2 million more, $9 million total. At 67 years old, after a lifetime of public service and living on a government salary, I was suddenly one of the wealthiest people I knew. Thomas had never married, never had children. He'd made his fortune in commercial real estate during the Florida boom of the 80s and 90s. We'd always been close, the only 2 children of a postal worker and a school teacher from Jacksonville. When he got sick last year, I'd flown down every weekend to be with him. I held his hand when he took his last breath. My son Kevin had been so supportive through it all. He'd insisted I move into his house in Sarasota after I retired from the bench last year. "You shouldn't be rattling around in that big house alone, Mom," he'd said. "Come stay with us. Madison and I would love to have you." Madison was his wife of 12 years, a woman I'd never quite warmed to but had learned to tolerate for my son's sake. They had no children, which Madison blamed on her career as a pharmaceutical sales rep, though I'd always suspected there was more to that story. I pulled into their driveway just as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the palm trees. The house was a sprawling Mediterranean-style home in a gated community, the kind of place that cost money to maintain. Kevin worked as a financial advisor, but I knew his practice had been struggling. He'd mentioned it once, briefly, before changing the subject. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the side entrance, the one that led through the garage into the kitchen. The garage door was open, and I could hear voices drifting out from inside. They must be having dinner early tonight. I was about to call out when I heard my name. "So Margaret gets everything?" That was Madison's voice, sharp and eager in a way I'd never heard before. "The whole $9 million? Every penny." Kevin's response made me freeze mid-step. The lawyer confirmed it today. The Naples house, the investments, the coin collection, all of it goes to Mom. I pressed myself against the wall of the garage, my heart pounding. Something in their voices made me stay hidden, made me listen. "And you're sure about the timeline?" Madison asked. "Dr. Reeves said we can start the medication protocol this week. Within a month, she'll be confused enough that any doctor will sign off on diminished capacity. Then we file for guardianship, and everything she inherited becomes ours to manage." "What about the house in Naples?" "We sell it immediately. $4 million, maybe more in this market. Pay off our debts, invest the rest. By the time anyone thinks to question anything, it'll be done." "And she won't suspect?" Kevin laughed. It was a sound that turned my blood to ice. "Mom's 67 years old. She thinks I'm still the little boy who used to bring her breakfast in bed on Mother's Day. She has no idea I've been monitoring her phone for the past 2 months. I know every conversation she's had with Uncle Thomas's lawyer, every email about the estate. She trusts me completely." I couldn't breathe. I pressed my hand against the cool concrete wall to steady myself. My son, my only child. The baby I'd nursed through colic, the teenager I'd defended when he got caught shoplifting at 16, the man I'd helped through his divorce from his first wife and celebrated when he married Madison. He was planning to drug me, declare me incompetent, and steal my brother's inheritance. "What about that nephew of hers?" Madison asked. "The one in Atlanta? Daniel? He hasn't talked to Mom in years. Not since she ruled against him in that custody case. He'll never know anything's wrong until it's too late." That wasn't true. Daniel and I had reconciled 2 years ago. We talked every month, had dinner together when he came to Florida for business. But Kevin didn't know that. Kevin hadn't bothered to know much about my life at all, I was realizing. "Dr. Reeves is sure about the medications?" Madison pressed. "Absolutely. He's done this before. His specialty is geriatric psychiatry, and he's very accommodating when the price is right. Lorazepam in her morning coffee, Zolpidem in her evening tea. Within 3 weeks, she won't know what day it is. The evaluation will be a formality." I backed away slowly, my legs shaking. I made it to my car, got inside, and sat there in the darkness, trembling. 41 years on the federal bench. I'd sentenced drug dealers, fraudsters, Murderers. I'd seen families torn apart by greed, watched children testify against parents and parents against children. I thought I understood human nature. I thought I understood my own son. But this kind of betrayal, this calculated, methodical plan to destroy my mind and steal everything I had, I never saw it coming. I started the engine and drove. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that house, away from the son I thought I knew, away from the life that had just shattered around me. I ended up in a Walmart parking lot, sitting under the fluorescent lights, trying to think, who could I call? Who would believe me? Kevin was charming, successful, the kind of man who made everyone feel like his best friend. Madison was polished and professional. Together, they were the perfect couple, the kind people envied. And I was just an elderly woman making wild accusations against her devoted son. But then something clicked. The same part of my brain that had analyzed complex cases for 4 decades, that had seen through hundreds of lying witnesses, that had built a reputation for being impossible to fool. I was Judge Margaret Sullivan. I'd presided over some of the most complicated fraud cases in Florida history. I'd written opinions that were cited by courts across the country. I knew how to build a case, how to gather evidence, how to be patient and methodical when everything inside me wanted to scream. If Kevin wanted to play this game, he'd picked the wrong opponent. I drove to a Target and bought a prepaid phone with cash. Then I called my nephew Daniel. "Aunt Margaret?" He sounded surprised. It was nearly 10 o'clock. "Is everything okay?" "Daniel, I need your help. And I need you to listen to everything I'm about to tell you before you say anything." He listened. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Aunt Margaret, I'm so sorry, but listen to me. I'm coming down there this weekend. Don't do anything until I get there. I work in corporate security now, remember? I know exactly how to document this kind of thing. What should I do in the meantime?" "Go back to the house. Act normal. Don't drink or eat anything they give you. I'm going to send you some links about phone monitoring software so you can understand what Kevin's seeing. And whatever you do, don't let them know you suspect anything." I spent that night in a hotel, using cash. I couldn't face going back to Kevin's house. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. The next morning, I went to a medical supply store and bought drug testing strips, the kind that could detect benzodiazepines and sleep medications. I bought a small hidden camera designed to look like a phone charger. I bought a voice-activated recorder that fit in my pocket, all cash, all untraceable. Then, I called Kevin from my regular phone. "Mom, where are you? We were worried when you didn't come home last night." "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I ran into an old colleague from the courthouse, and we ended up having dinner and talking until late. I just got a hotel room instead of driving home tired. You know how my night vision isn't what it used to be." "Oh, that's fine. We were just concerned. Are you coming back today?" "I'll be there this afternoon. I have so much to tell you about Uncle Thomas's estate." "Can't wait to hear it, Mom." "Love you. Love you too, sweetheart." I hung up and felt physically ill. The warmth in his voice, the concern, it all sounded so genuine. If I hadn't heard what I'd heard, I never would have suspected. I spent the rest of the morning preparing. Daniel had sent me information about the monitoring software Kevin was using. It tracked my calls, texts, emails, even my location. Every conversation I'd had for the past 2 months had been visible to my son. But the burner phone was clean, and the laptop I'd bought that morning was registered to a name I'd invented. I was building my own surveillance operation, and Kevin had no idea. I returned to the house that afternoon. Kevin hugged me warmly. Madison smiled her perfect smile and offered to make me tea. "That would be lovely, dear," I said. I watched her prepare it, watched her turn her back to me for just a moment, her hand moving to her pocket. When she handed me the cup, I raised it to my lips and pretended to drink. "Delicious," I said. "You always make it just right." I kept the cup with me, sipping periodically without actually swallowing. When no one was looking, I poured some into a small container I'd hidden in my cardigan pocket. That night, I tested it. The strip turned blue immediately. Benzodiazepines. My daughter-in-law had just tried to drug me for the first time. I sat on my bed in the guest room and forced myself not to cry. Not yet. There would be time for grief later. Right now, I needed to be the judge, not the mother. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Every morning, Kevin made my coffee. Every afternoon, Madison made my tea. Every evening, one of them would offer me a nightcap or suggest I take an antihistamine for my allergies. I accepted everything, tested everything, documented everything. I never actually consumed any of it. I started acting confused. I'd forget what day it was, ask the same question twice, leave my reading glasses in the refrigerator. I watched Kevin and Madison exchange glances, saw the satisfaction in their eyes. Their plan was working, they thought. Daniel flew down that first weekend, but we didn't meet at Kevin's house. Instead, we rendezvoused at a coffee shop 20 miles away. "I've got everything," he said, spreading documents across the table. "Kevin's been accessing your financial accounts since September. He's already moved $30,000 from your pension account into a joint account with Madison. And look at this." He showed me screenshots from Kevin's browser history, obtained through methods I didn't ask about. Searches for guardianship process Florida. Medications that cause confusion in elderly. Psychiatrists who do competency evaluations. Sarasota. He's been planning this since before Uncle Thomas died. My brother wasn't even cold in his grave before my son started scheming to steal his money. "There's more," Daniel said. "Dr. Harold Reeves. He's been investigated twice by the state medical board for questionable competency evaluations. No charges, but there's a pattern. Kevin found him specifically because he knew Reeves could be bought. How much do we have? Enough to bury them. But we need to be strategic. Let them think they're winning right up until the end." Kevin scheduled my evaluation with Dr. Reeves for the following week. He told me it was just a routine checkup, a new doctor he'd found who specialized in senior care. "You'll love him, Mom. He's very gentle, very thorough." I went. I played my part. I answered questions slowly, pretended to be confused about dates and names, acted flustered when asked to count backward from 100. Dr. Reeves smiled sympathetically and told Kevin he had concerns about my cognitive function. "I'm recommending a guardianship evaluation," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "For her own protection, of course." Kevin squeezed my hand. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything." I smiled at him, playing the confused, grateful mother. Inside, I was counting down the days until his world collapsed. The guardianship hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Kevin and Madison were practically giddy. They'd already started shopping for new cars, talking about renovating the house, planning a European vacation. Money they didn't have yet. Money they were convinced they'd be stealing from me. I spent those weeks gathering evidence with Daniel's help. Hidden camera footage of Madison crushing pills into my food. Audio recordings of Kevin discussing the scheme on the phone with Dr. Reeves. Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers. Screenshots of Kevin's searches and emails. A complete timeline of their conspiracy. I also hired an attorney. Not just any attorney, but Victoria Chen, the most feared elder law specialist in Florida. She'd been a prosecutor in my courtroom 20 years ago. Now she ran a practice that specialized in exposing exactly this kind of abuse. "Margaret, this is textbook guardianship fraud," she said after reviewing everything. "We're going to destroy them, but I want to do it publicly. I want to make an example of them, so this never happens to another elderly person in this state. Whatever you think is best, Victoria. I trust you." The morning of the hearing arrived. Kevin had me dressed in clothes that made me look frail and old. He'd suggested I not wear makeup, said it would make me look more natural. He wanted me to look pathetic in front of the judge. The courtroom was smaller than the ones I'd presided over, but the setting was familiar. Judge Robert Martinez was on the bench. I'd known him for 30 years. We'd been colleagues, friends. He had no idea what was about to happen. Kevin's attorney went first, a smooth-talking man named Harrison Wells, who specialized in guardianship cases. He presented Dr. Reeves's evaluation, testimony from Kevin and Madison about my declining mental state, evidence of my erratic behavior. "Your Honor, Mrs. Sullivan is clearly no longer capable of managing her own affairs. Her son, who loves her deeply, is simply asking for the legal authority to protect her from exploitation," Kevin testified. He was masterful, I had to admit. Tears in his eyes, voice breaking as he described watching his mother slip away. Madison was equally convincing, playing the concerned daughter-in-law. When they finished, Judge Martinez looked at me. Mrs. Sullivan, do you have representation? I stood up slowly, still playing my part one last time. I think so? There was a lady. Victoria Chen rose from the back of the courtroom. Your Honor, I'm Victoria Chen, representing Mrs. Sullivan. We have some evidence to present, if it please the court. Harrison Wells jumped up. Your Honor, we weren't notified of opposing counsel. Mrs. Sullivan is entitled to representation. Mr. Wells, Miss Chen, proceed. Victoria walked to the front with a tablet. Your Honor, I'd like to begin with a recording made on January 15th of this year. She pressed play. Kevin's voice filled the courtroom. Dr. Reeves said we can start the medication protocol this week. Within a month, she'll be confused enough that any doctor will sign off on diminished capacity. Madison's voice. And she won't suspect? Kevin. Mom thinks I'm still the little boy who used to bring her breakfast in bed on Mother's Day. She trusts me completely. The color drained from Kevin's face. Madison gripped the arm of her chair so hard her knuckles went white. Victoria continued. Your Honor, this is just the beginning. We have video evidence of Mrs. Madison Sullivan, the petitioner's wife, crushing benzodiazepines into food intended for Mrs. Sullivan. We have drug tests confirming the presence of lorazepam and zolpidem in beverages prepared for her. We have evidence of illegal phone monitoring, unauthorized access to financial accounts, and the theft of approximately $30,000. She played the videos. She showed the drug tests. She pulled up bank statements and phone records and screenshots of Kevin's searches. Every piece of evidence, every damning detail. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have evidence that Dr. Harold Reeves, who provided the psychiatric evaluation, has a history of providing fraudulent competency assessments. He was paid $15,000 by Mr. Sullivan specifically because of his reputation for being accommodating. Harrison Wells stood up. Your Honor, I had no knowledge of any of this. I was retained under false pretenses. Judge Martinez held up his hand. Sit down, Mr. Wells. He turned to Kevin. Mr. Sullivan, is this recording authentic? Kevin couldn't speak. He just stared at the table in front of him. I'll take that as a yes. Judge Martinez turned to me. Mrs. Sullivan, would you like to address the court? I stood up, and this time there was no confusion in my eyes, no tremor in my voice. Your Honor, my name is Margaret Sullivan. I served as a federal judge for 41 years before retiring last year. I've presided over hundreds of cases, written opinions cited by courts across the country, and testified as an expert witness in matters of judicial procedure. I can recite the federal rules of evidence from memory if you'd like. I turned to look at Kevin for the first time since the recording played. I am not impaired. I am not confused. I am not vulnerable. What I am is heartbroken that my only child, the son I raised and loved and sacrificed for, would try to poison me, destroy my mind, and steal the inheritance my brother left me. Kevin was crying now. But these weren't the performative tears from earlier. These were the desperate tears of a man watching his life collapse. Your Honor, Victoria continued, we're requesting that this guardianship petition be dismissed and that this matter be referred to the state attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Judge Martinez didn't hesitate. Petition denied. Bailiff, please detain Mr. Kevin Sullivan and Mrs. Madison Sullivan pending investigation. I'm also ordering the immediate arrest of Dr. Harold Reeves. He turned to me. Judge Sullivan, I'm deeply sorry you had to endure this. This court will issue a protective order immediately. The bailiffs moved forward. Kevin looked at me with wild eyes. Mom, please, I'm sorry. We were drowning in debt. The business failed. We were going to lose everything. I didn't know what else to do. I looked at my son, the baby I'd held in my arms, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd trusted. You didn't ask me for help. You didn't tell me you were struggling. You didn't give me the chance to be your mother. Instead, you chose to destroy me. That's not desperation, Kevin. That's betrayal. Madison tried to grab my arm as they led her past. Mom, please understand. It was Kevin's idea. I didn't want to. You crushed pills into my food with your own hands. Don't insult me by pretending you were a victim. They were let out in handcuffs. The courtroom emptied slowly. Victoria stayed with me, her hand on my shoulder. That was brutal, she said softly. It needed to be. They needed to understand who they were dealing with. What will you do now? I thought about it. I'm going to move into Thomas's house in Naples. I'm going to live the life my brother wanted me to have. And I'm going to spend the rest of my years making sure this never happens to anyone else. The criminal trial happened 5 months later. I testified for 6 hours, walking the jury through every piece of evidence, every recording, every moment of betrayal. Kevin's lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive mother who couldn't forgive a moment of weakness. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Kevin got 8 years for elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. Madison got 5. Dr. Reeves got 15. Mine wasn't his first victim. I didn't attend the sentencing. Victoria went in my place. "How do you feel?" she asked when she called afterward. "Empty, relieved, sad, all of it at once." "That's normal. You did the right thing." I knew I had, but it didn't feel good. I moved into Thomas's house in Naples the week after the trial. It was beautiful, just like him. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Gulf, a pool where I could swim every morning, a library filled with his books. I spent the first month just existing, watching the water, reading, trying not to think about Kevin and Madison in their prison cells. Daniel came to visit often. He'd moved his business to Florida to be closer to me. We'd have dinner on the terrace, watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. "You need to start living again, Aunt Margaret." "I'm trying. Uncle Thomas wouldn't want you hiding in his house." Thomas would understand. But Daniel was right. Thomas had left me this house so I could enjoy it, not so I could use it as a prison. So slowly, I started building a new life. I joined the local bar association's pro bono program, using my legal expertise to help elderly people who couldn't afford representation. I started speaking at conferences about guardianship abuse, sharing my story so others could recognize the warning signs. I wrote articles, did interviews, became an advocate. 3 years passed. I was 70 years old, healthier than I'd been in decades, surrounded by friends and purpose. Then one afternoon, my housekeeper told me someone was at the door. "She says she's your daughter-in-law." My heart stopped. Madison had been released early. "Good behavior," they said. I found her standing on my front porch, looking out at the water. She'd aged. Her hair was gray now, her face lined. Prison had not been kind to her. "Margaret, thank you for seeing me. What do you want?" "To apologize. I know it's worthless. I know you'll never forgive me, but I needed to say it." I studied her face. I'd spent 41 years learning to read people, to see when they were lying. Madison wasn't lying now. She was broken. "Kevin asked me to come," she continued. "He's still inside, has another 3 years. He wanted me to tell you he's sorry, that he understands now, that he's been going to therapy, working on himself. And you?" I divorced him. Couldn't stay married to the person I became when I was with him. But that's not an excuse. I made my own choices. I crushed those pills with my own hands, just like you said. She pulled an envelope from her purse. "This is everything we took from you. With interest. I've been working since I got out, saved every penny. It took 3 years, but I paid it all back." She set the envelope on the railing and turned to leave. "Madison," she stopped. "I appreciate the apology. I appreciate the money. But you're right. I will never forgive what you did. You didn't just try to steal from me. You tried to erase me. You tried to turn me into a hollow shell so you could take everything I had. I know. I hope you build a good life. I hope you become a better person, but I don't want to see you again. And when Kevin gets out, tell him the same thing. I wish him well, but he is no longer my son." She nodded, wiping tears from her face. "Goodbye, Margaret." I watched her walk away, down the driveway, through the gate, out of my life. I picked up the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $37,000 and a handwritten note. "I'm sorry for everything. We were drowning and we made terrible choices. I hope someday you can remember the good times before we ruined everything. Madison." I sat down on one of Thomas's deck chairs, holding that envelope, and for the first time in 3 years, I let myself cry. Not for the money, not for the betrayal, but for the family I'd lost, the son I'd raised, the grandchildren I'd never have now, the holiday dinners and birthday celebrations and ordinary Sunday afternoons that would never happen. My housekeeper found me there an hour later. "Judge Sullivan, are you all right?" "I will be," I said. And I meant it. Because even though I'd lost Kevin and Madison, I'd gained something else. I'd gained the knowledge that I was strong enough to protect myself. I'd gained purpose through my advocacy work. I'd gained Thomas's house and the life he wanted me to have. That evening, I sat on the terrace watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of coral and gold. I thought about that day 3 years ago when I'd driven home from the attorney's office, excited to share good news with my family. I thought about how quickly everything had shattered. But I also thought about the people I'd helped since then. The elderly woman in Tampa whose nephew was trying to steal her savings. The retired teacher in Orlando whose own daughter was falsifying her signature on checks. The countless seniors who'd attended my talks and learned to recognize the warning signs of financial exploitation. Thomas used to say that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to our true purpose. He was right. What Kevin and Madison did to me was unforgivable, but it led me here, to this work, to these people, to a mission that gave meaning to my final years. I raised my glass to the sunset, to Thomas, to the life I'd built from the ashes. "Thank you, brother," I whispered. For the inheritance, yes, but mostly for reminding me that I was never as fragile as they thought I was. The sun dipped below the gulf, and I went inside to prepare for tomorrow. I had a speaking engagement at the state capitol, then a meeting with a family whose father was being exploited by his caregiver, then a dinner with Daniel and his new wife. I was 70 years old. I'd lost my son to his own greed, but I'd found myself in the process. And every day, I used that hard-won wisdom to protect someone else's mother, someone else's grandmother, someone else's beloved elder. The law had functioned. Justice had been served. But the cost of that justice was something I'd carry for the rest of my life. Some prices are worth paying. Some losses make us stronger. And some betrayals, as devastating as they are, lead us exactly where we were meant to be all along.